everybody. Welcome back to the, what day is it? Thursday edition of Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied beard and hands. What were we calling him before? I don't remember. John, and then, for lack of a better name. I'm sure Quindy is with us in spirit, as is Kiki, who is currently decided today is a lazy morning. She'll probably show up later when she's saying, hey, time. So how y'all today? I see lots of morning mornings. Excellent. Well, we'll just get straight into the paint then. Oh boy. I slept like the dead last night, which is really rare for me. Really rare. Usually, I did wake up once during the night, but it was like up and then poof. I haven't checked my sleep score, but I suspect it is very good. At least high 80s. But yeah, it's good. This morning I was investigating. Oh, hold on. There we go. Sorry, some things have gotten out of order here. When I take pictures or shoot video, like sometimes I move things around. So Mr. Barbarian was a little shadowy there, so now he's back. All right. But yeah, this morning I was investigating different platforms to upload my books to now that I'm not exclusive to Amazon anymore. I already have done a couple of them. But I actually got a book. I was watching an author on YouTube who does, tutorials for this sort of thing to make sure I did Streetlib right. And she actually had a book about going wide where she breaks down all the platforms and like pros and cons and everything. So I was like, oh, cool. Easy sale. Boom. You just made $5. Good job, author. So I've been reading her book, which is very enlightening. She knows her stuff. But I've already uploaded to a couple of platforms, so I thought putting the brakes on and kind of like looking at everything might be a good thing to do. But I was trying to figure out if it was worth doing Google and Apple, really. Let's see here. What are we going to work on today? It's interesting. People have very split opinions. Too scared to check their sleep score. There was definitely like an element of that. There are days, Kritiko, where I know that it's a terrible score, and I purposefully do not check it on those days, because I know that if I look at it and I see a 70 something, I'm just going to be like, feel even more tired. So usually it seems pretty accurate. There are some days where the Fitbit has been off, but it's a very small sample size of a day where I feel good, but the Fitbit says I didn't get good sleep. That's pretty rare. I'd say like maybe like 5%, maybe. But, yeah, it's in the 80s most days. Good for you, Agent Marvel. With kids. You get good sleep with kids. That's insane. I'm sure toddlers disrupt most people's sleep when they exist. All right, so let us see. We got gold to do, but I did need to continue highlighting the leather here before we do that gold, or we're just the gold and the leather are going to look very similar to each other. So just kind of glancing across, seeing what I need to do. And that's pretty much what we're left on, is the bits of leather that I didn't quite get to, and then blocking in the gold. And that's going to get our vampire barbarian, blocked in totally. So that's lovely. Oh, Turgeon. Yeah. Then it's just depressing. And it affects so much else about your life, too. The sleep, the sleep quality. Now I'm curious. Okay, what's my sleep score? I'm saying it's at least an 86, but I really feel confident it's above an 87. 89. There we go. Yeah, I dreamed a lot. Ooh, this is very stable. I love looking at my sleep score because it tells me like how restless I've been during the night too. It like puts little red dots. This is a very smooth sleep score. There are bits where I turned over, but for the most part, the only little red bits are the parts where I'm going to sleep, waking up, and where I got up. That's it. That's insane. Like, usually it's not. Let's pick a bad day. Where's a fairly not as good day? Come on. Actually, I've gotten pretty good sleep lately. This is one where it didn't track much of the night. No, I've been pretty good. Pretty good recently. I don't see a really disrupted one here to show y'all. Yeah, they're pretty good. Sometimes when they're really awful, it's just like all sorts of little disruptions and stuff. But yeah, like this one was an 82, but you can see how much more like it's not nearly as nice, right? It's like a lot of up and downs. It's not. I was definitely waking up and going back to sleep a lot that night and I didn't feel well rested. And that was an 82. So usually, when I have an 87 or above, I can feel the difference. I feel like really charged up for the day. I'm good focus, you know, able to stay on track. Hey, Crowley. We're just talking about toddlers disrupting sleep and how it's crazy that Agent Marvel, who has a toddler, is able to get sleep scores in the 80s every night. I do find there's a difference between low 80s and high 80s, though. Do you find that, Agent Marvel? Let's see here. What do I want to do? I want to do my leather. Yeah, if you wake up a lot during the night, Kerniko. Then it does look like electrified spaghetti, just like that one I showed. It's like, yep. But yeah, I'm looking at different platforms to get East of the Sun and West of the Moon out there now, and it's interesting. It's an interesting journey. All right, let's build for NMM, but then I can take some of those colors and mute them out a little and use them to figure out the front of this leather. They're very similar. I'm just not adding really any yellow to create this raw leather color. Whereas with the gold I will be. And that's why I want to get the highlights all on the leather first, because I'm using a very similar base color. So that being the case, I want to make sure that the gold is going to pop more initially than the leather. Ah, okay. Yeah, it usually coincides with that, right? Alrighty. Yeah, I find the 82s are definitely not as good sleep nights. They're still in the 80s, but like when I have 87 or higher, I'm like, yes! And like the first 3 days, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of this week was like 90, 91, 90. I was like, oh, 90 feels like superpowers. Like 90 is obviously the sleep I am meant to get, because it's like I'm so relaxed. I deal with stress so much better when it happens. I was like, if only I could get the 90s every day. So I'll tell you, changing back to low carb has definitely stabilized my sleep scores. I was at my worst over Thanksgiving and just after. All right. I'm going to mix for, like I said, we're going to mix for the gold. Though I am still going to mute the gold a little bit because he's our barbarian. He has a more muted color scheme in general, so. But yeah, so I'm looking into all these other retailers for East of the Sun and West of the Moon because if I'm not going to be exclusive to Amazon, I can publish the ebook anywhere, and that makes it more wide, more able for people to find it. But the downside is all those different platforms that you have, and you have to decide like what to use an aggregator for, and aggregators are businesses that happily submit your book to a bunch of platforms, and you only have one dashboard, but they also take a bigger cut of your sales. So it's like... And all of the aggregators like do kind of the same thing, but then they all have different specialties that are all different. So it's kind of a pain, kind of a pain. So I'm reading my book now, hopefully hoping to find. Interestingly, she didn't have a lot of negatives about Google and Apple, and in fact, Google was her secondary, like definitely put your book up on platform, which is funny because most indies I know say Kobo, which is the first one I put my book up on. But Google apparently is an international market. But I don't know. David, who works for Google, is essentially like, yes, the books department is an afterthought. And I'm like, yeah. So I was kind of treating it like an afterthought. But apparently there are authors out there that consider it worth it. So I don't know. I'm just a baby author, and I doubt I'm going to get many sales from any of these at first. You usually, it's funny, but I get the feeling that you only start selling a lot of books on these non-Amazon platforms when your book has started to go bigger on Amazon. Like, because awareness of your book needs to be out there for people to find it anyway. So, it's interesting. Yeah. Oh, weird. I've never had that happen, Agent Marvel. If I'm up, although actually, I guess if you do that, like, if you're like kind of sleepwalking through that because it's on autopilot, I guess your brainwaves could stay like stable enough that it keeps counting sleep, especially because you're laying down again at the end of it. And it probably does learn your habits a little bit. Why are you looking at me, squirrel? There's a squirrel sitting on the fence with a nut in its mouth and is staring at me, and its tail is just going crazy. Woof, 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 woof. It just ran off. It saw me when I gave it the eye. It saw me, but it was just staring at me like, "Are you gonna steal my nut? Are you gonna steal my nut?" It's just ridiculous. The girl squirrel that hangs out on our side patio and back fence of she's a gray squirrel. She's been burying nuts all along the border of our house. An evil squirrel, yeah. Stopped at 5:30. Huh, interesting. Yeah, it's not a inspirational squirrel. It's definitely not, like, foolproof, Agent Marvel, so I always take it with a little grain of salt, but it's interesting how often it is accurate as far as when I look at my energy levels and my focus. Like, those are the things that I notice changing up a lot. And my stress management, too, but I won't notice that unless I have a stressful day. Or a day that would normally be stressful, but then I got a good sleep score and it isn't affecting me as much. But yeah, I usually don't look at my sleep score right away in the morning because I like to kind of test myself. I like to stop and then guess based on how I feel and how I'm functioning. I like to guess where it's at. And then check it and see. There have definitely been days where it says I got a good sleep score, but I felt like a zombie, and that may have been just waking up in the middle of a sleep cycle badly where I got sleep, but my cycle was not on and I feel off all day. No idea. It's skin temperature, heart rate, and like I thought it was something else as well, Turgeon. But it's definitely skin temperature. It has a temperature sensor. Oh, and it's also assessing. I don't know how it does this, but it has an O2, like blood oxygen tracker, which is probably an interrelation between heart rate and skin temp, I would imagine. But it estimates your O2 as well, so how oxygenated your blood is. It's interesting. It's very interesting. And some of these things are not super accurate, like they've proven that they're not super accurate. I'm thinking about when I get my next one, I'm thinking about getting a Garmin because apparently their smart fitness watch is the most accurate as far as heart rate and everything by pretty significant margins. So the technology keeps getting better. But yeah, I'm betting it's using O2 plus skin temp plus let's see here. Because if I click through to sleep, it will, and I click on a day, say today. Oh, no, I want today. Today. It'll like give me my thing. It'll give me my stages. It'll tell me how much I had of each of these. I didn't get much deep sleep last night, but it was okay with that. And this is an estimated oxygen variation. So essentially I have very low variation. That's probably, then there's sleeping heart rate, which I don't get because I'm not on the premium anymore. Sleep schedule, restlessness. So it also takes restlessness into account, like how much you toss and turn. Oh, are they Slayer? Okay. Yeah, I like the look of their watch a lot. Like, so yeah, so it's restlessness, skin temperature, estimated oxygenation, and I'm assuming they got the oxygenation from heart rate. So mostly I bet it's temperature, heart rate, and tossing and turning turgid. That's what I'm betting. Because if you toss and turn, you're not in REM, right? If you're making, because REM sleep shuts down your motor functions. Otherwise, you'd be sleepwalking, acting out your dreams. So your body goes into a state of total motionlessness when you hit REM. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. But yeah, the Fitbit, as far as judging sleep score, the Fitbit definitely wants you to get a lot of REM sleep. Like, if I even get like an hour and a few minutes, it thinks that's not enough. It loves it when I get over an hour and a half of REM per night. It is nice. I set a goal of 7 hours and 15 minutes of actual sleep a night, which seems to be 7:30 seems to be more my sweet spot. But yeah, that's good, Slayer, that you like the Garmin. I think I really like how some of the, I think it's the Vivo 5, the new one, looks like a traditional clock face. Looks pretty classy, actually. And then it's actually a responsive screen. It just looks like an awesome watch. And you can get fancy bands for it. So you can look like you're wearing a nice watch instead of wearing a fitness tracker, right? Which I kind of would like to have again. So yeah, you can compare each type of sleep to what a typical range is for your age. And yeah, I like that too. I tend to get a lot more light sleep than most people my age, but I'm a light sleeper and I have been for forever, and I've known that, right? So that makes sense to me. I also get like less awake time on average than the average person in my age category. So yeah, it's interesting. All right, so now I'm going to take this. So we've got our NMM colors mixed up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this. Anyway, it's all very interesting. It's an interesting little gadget. I like it. It seems to be fairly accurate as far as correlating it with how I feel in a given day. So we're going to take some of this rich leather and a tiny touch of brown liner just to darken it down a little bit less. I want a little bit more rich leather. And we're going to pop some white in it and get that highlight color that I want for my leather. And I'm going to kind of compare that. Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted. And then pop this over, drop some more white in it. Actually, yeah, I think I used pure white last time. Yeah, that's the other thing it'll do. It'll compare you with typical ranges for your age and sex, I think. Yeah, they're cool. They're cool little things. I really like mine. And I still use mine to like assess heart rate during workouts, even though I know it's inaccurate. I'll just kind of like keep that in mind. Although I don't know how inaccurate mine is. Like during CrossFit, when I am severely like having trouble, like when I'm really struggling, or really, really feeling like I'm about to vomit, it's almost always in the high 150s to low 160s, which is my max. It's in the upper like 10 percentile of my heart rate capacity at this age. So it seems like that's fairly accurate. I don't know. But yeah. But I'm sure in different things, it's less accurate in certain things and more accurate in others. Because, of course, it's counting your steps, right? And when you're, like, biking, you're not giving it that particular motion that it's used to, so. All right, so you see how different those are then. Using the same colors here, but mixing them differently. So, essentially, sum of individual scores in sleep duration, sleep quality, time in deep and REM, and restoration, heart rate, and restlessness. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Agent Marvel. That makes sense that duration would also count in. Because it wants you to get enough sleep. Whatever enough sleep is for you. So it's probably not necessarily as good a tracker for people who like naturally can get lower amounts of sleep, right? Because it's going to say, you need more sleep. And the human is going to say, no, actually I don't. Because I'm a weird human who doesn't require that much sleep. All this is area down under the axis in shadow, so I'm just going to hit those. I have to zoom back in. So I'm just going to hit these little pieces just with my first highlight, not my second highlight, these little bits. And then I'll go over here. I taught David a new game to play with Kiki that I've been doing on the walk, and he's like all into it, which is awesome. Like, David has really come like he is like a really good dog parent right now. Like, because when I show him like training things for Kiki that actually have, like, he'll try them, and then if it works, he's really good about executing on them. So like training her on her recall at the park, he does it like he's really good about it, and she's really good on recall now. And then I've been training her to walk next to me using the 1, 2, 3 pattern game. So I taught him that game last night, and he tried it this morning, and he loves it. He's just like doing it all the time now. So he's like, I'm going to do this on every walk, because it trains her to walk, to be excited about walking next to us. Because you count off 1, 2, 3, and at 3 she gets a treat. And apparently she was so excited to play it with him this morning that she was actually doing little hops. That she was so excited to get her a treat. Which is adorable. I've had her hop a little bit with me too, and it's just adorable. Her little front paws go up, and she's like, pop, hop, hop, Mom. Where's my treat? I know it's coming. I'm so excited. She's a good girl. Most of the time. So I want to put one more level of highlight on these because I brought up the highlight up here. That'll get that more in line with those. This is more in shadow, so I don't want to like pop it. Yes, it does. For sure know the difference between sleep and meditation. I mean, for one thing, okay, here we go, Teresa. It might not, but in order for it to track sleep, you have to be asleep for at least, I think, 2 hours. So you'd have to meditate for hours to have to, like, you'd have to get essentially like a monk to test that, because who else among us meditates for 2 hours? So maybe it wouldn't, although it would not, I don't think it would give you an REM, I don't think it'd be able to like give you an REM score, because you wouldn't be like at total relaxation. Because some of your muscles are still tense. Your heart rate is not going to slow down like it does when you sleep. Unless, again, you're like, if you're like that 70-year-old Buddhist monk with decades of experience, maybe you could calm your heart enough. And certainly there are people who fall asleep while meditating. So, like, they're close, right? But, yeah, the difficulty is in finding somebody who will actually sit there and meditate for 2 hours plus, and then seeing if the Fitbit thinks it's asleep. And you'd have to be like really still for it, I think, for it to do that. But maybe, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. It's not super smart. It's just it's a smarter watch. But it's pretty fun. It's pretty cool what it does pick up on. Alrighty, so just hitting that little bit to highlight it. Yeah, that's what I do. I do usually a box breathing, or I have this thing in my head that I do a door opening exercise in my head, and it makes my heart rate go down at the doctor's. Yeah, because otherwise my heart rate's always really high at the doctor's because of past experiences. But yeah, even then, that if it drops your heart rate to normal rate, it's like you would need to drop your heart rate significantly. Like my resting heart rate when I'm working out is really low at night. I can get close if I'm sitting really still. Like I can get down to 65 beats a minute or thereabouts. If I'm, if I've been exercising and I'm really in shape at the time. Just going to do a little tiny bit of highlighting on these. only with the first. So you see that shadow? We want to keep that shadow. Hey, Nara. What is my resting these days? I don't forget if it used to, Fitbit changes what it's going to give you for no money. Does it tell me my resting? Yeah, I would need premium score for that, which is kind of a crock, but maybe it puts it on the front dash. Yeah, my resting heart rate right now is 62. Yeah. My mom has that super low. She's got low blood pressure. Alrighty, so we've got our leather there. I think we're safe to put the gold on now, because especially when I look at it and I can see the difference between these colors, even though these colors are mixed from these colors. I will darken this just a little because we do want a more muted gold. I'll probably mix a tiny bit of my brown liner into each of these, but I mean tiny, because I don't want it to go to the leather color. I don't want it to go all the way down there. You could also use a complementary color. You could try mixing a little bit of purple in, and we do have orchid purple, so maybe we'll try that. So let's grab our orchid purple, which does have a lot of red in it. Might shift us a little orangey. Wow, that is freaking low, Turgeon. Yeah. Well, at least you have that instead of high blood pressure. I mean, relatively speaking. But still. My mom used to joke that when hers got really low, she could call in dead to her job. Because she was so little. There was so little. She's like, they wouldn't find anything. I asked her if she was a vampire. I wonder how exercise would affect that, Turgeon. I know you've got some foot issues, so I assume you're not really exercising right now. Although you could still try doing like dumbbells and stuff if you felt up to it. I wonder if that would like make it go higher? Because usually, you know, it helps bring people's blood pressure down, but that's only when it's above. All right. But that's my exercise nerd self wondering how it would affect things. So this is it's not very blue. So chances are it's going to not necessarily mute this the way I want to. If I really wanted to, I probably should grab our Sticks Purple, which I think is what we were using for the purple on here. Yeah, I should. So instead I'm going to put some sticks over here. I'm just making a couple of puddles. I'm just going to grab a little bit of that Sticks Purple, like a tiny bit. See a little bobble on the end of my brush? It's just a little blob, tiny blob. And we'll mix it in. Let's darken it just a little bit. So the thing about this is that putting in a complementary color, it'll darken it a little bit. It's not going to lose like some of its intensity. So like it's not going to do this where it really knocks it out and grays out the brown. Instead, it's going to keep more of that intensity. It's just going to mute it a little bit. So that's why you would use a complementary color, is like, hey, I want to mute this, but I don't want it to look like my leather color. I'm using the same color to start with. Is that kind of thing. Let's try that. So I've just darkened it a little bit. Hopefully that'll mute it. If I really want to know if it's muted, I can take a brush full of this and drop a little white into it just to see what kind of color I've got. And yeah, that's good. It's not, you can see that it's still, like, it's getting closer to this, but you can see that it's more of a golden color. It's not as gray. So, but it's still muted. So that's good. That's probably a sign that we want to go with that color. Add just a little bit water to this. I definitely took a bunch of it to mix other things with, and so there isn't much left in my, well, see if that's going to be thick enough. No, I think that's going to be, well, maybe. I feel like that's too thin. All right, I'm going to add another drop of rich leather and add a little bit more of that Sticks Purple to it. But yeah, usually mine is right at like 120/79, as long as I remember my breathing exercises at the doctor. If I don't remember my breathing exercises, it's more like 150/145/80. Mixing in more of that Sticks Purple. They say it's your blood pressure is supposed to be lower than 120/80 these days. They're like, that was an old standard and we need to revise it because it's not as healthy as these lower numbers. All right, well, let's let that dry before I try putting another coat on it. Might need to add a little bit more sticks. Actually, probably not. I think I'm just going to build a shadow for this based by adding in Sticks Purple and a bit of brown liner. So we'll stick with that. It's close enough. Close enough to what I'm aiming for. And we've achieved what we wanted, and the gold is a different color than the leather, so even though we used the same colors to build it. I did lose a little bit of my edging here. I want to make sure I've got this white underpainting on the edge around the belt. Then we'll start blocking all this in, and by the time we're done, we'll have everything covered up. Which is now my goal. And then we can move on. We will eventually get this model done. It feels like this model has taken me so long. There's a gap here where you can see the primer, but it all just sinks down into like a lack of detail down there. I'm just going to block that in with brown liner. We're just not going to worry about it, folks. When it's down there in the crevices, especially with our lighting effect, remember we used a pretty strong zenith for this, that's just not going to matter. So we're just going to make it solid. Then you won't even notice it. Most of it's probably fur anyway, the edge of the cuff here. Fur and just like filler. Oh, there's a pouch there. I see what it is. Well, I don't want to confuse the eye there, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah, it has a lot of different surfaces, and that's been a lot of it. You're right, Inara. I'll have to decide how much to knock down this shark bite that I used as well. I will want to mute it just a little, but I think shading and highlighting is going to mute it just fine, so. My parents arrive tomorrow. Hopefully I survive it. They're just here for a couple days. It's funny. I like, in some ways, I like hanging out with David's parents better than with my parents. But my parents, I think, are less stressful because they only stay for 2 days and they stay in a hotel when they come. They don't use our guest room. So we actually still have like autonomous time during the day, which for me is kind of important to chill. Nope. No, I'm gonna... Yeah, exactly. Right, Polly? No, I'm gonna do my stream tomorrow. And they'll be gone, like they're leaving Sunday, I think, so. And they're not coming, they won't be here till like between 2 and 3 tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon. So I'll essentially do the stream and have lunch with David, and then we'll clean the house real quick, the parts of the house we need to clean. Because, you know, when your mom is coming... But I do get to go look forward to going to the yarn store with my mom, so I need to figure out what kind of yarn I want for what my next project is going to be. I kind of want... I like my cowl, but I made it with a wool yarn, and it feels just... It's like mostly soft, but it's also just got that underlying just a little bit of scratchiness to it. I kind of want to make, like, find a yarn that I can make a really soft cowl from. Because I like the cowl... in place of a scarf sometimes. I like how it cinches tight around here and doesn't let cold air in. And I don't have to deal with the tails, right? I just have to deal with the other loop where I can let it hang down here or wherever. So I kind of feel, but I want a really soft one. So maybe I'll have to look at yarns with an eye towards soft. Alright, so I've got that. I'm going to make these red. I need to actually, I'll get out my red and make the beard ties red at the during this stream at some point. I need to look down here. I've got the top of the axe here is really hard to reach. I can see it's way back in here. And this is sometimes the problem with 3D sculpts that are like one piece. It could print this, but it's really hard to get a brush in there. So I'm trying to just get the top of that axe. And then it's just really hard. You can see there's still a little bit of primer stuck in here. Right in there. So I'm going to grab my... Just try to block it out. There we go, I got it. It's kind of annoying how that has that detail back there. Honestly, just throw some walnut or some black brown liner back there. Oh yeah, that's the problem with the soft yarn, right? Yeah, that's funny, Inara, you're probably right. I mean, I like merino wool a lot, and that's what I made the first cowl with, the teal one. But, yeah, part of me wants something really, really soft and cozy, because I love soft things. Yeah, I'm sure you're right, Inara, that it'll cost more. Alright, salmon gray. Oh, there's a little bit of that down there. Oh, and I missed, there's a wrap there that I should have painted as well. For some reason I didn't paint the bottom of that wrap, so when I do the red for his beard, I can also do the red for that wrap. And I'm going to mix up my purple and red here to make kind of a conglomeration color, just to keep it wet. Really heavy blanket, yeah, you could do that, I'm sure. If I do the soft yarn, I'll just do a really simple one, like a double seed stitch like I did for my first cowl. I don't know, I might just do regular stitch though, because the softer the yarn, the fuzzier the yarn, the less you see the pattern. Although once I did the wash and the stretch, once I blocked my cowl, I could see the pattern a lot more. All right, let's see here. So I need that red, but I'm not there yet. Get the back of this handle. Gotta get this little, oh, gotta get the belt. I was talking, my mom is coming this weekend, Richard, so I was saying she wanted to go to my yarn store, so I get to go to the yarn store this weekend, which is, you know, something to look forward to. But then I need to figure out what I want to buy before I go, so that I'm not just wandering around haphazardly grabbing everything. I still have yarn that I want to use to make a dog blanket for Kiki for the couch. So probably this winter I should be working on that project, because that's a nice repetitive, monotonous project to do. Yes, any hobby store is dangerous without a plan. Exactly. I've got to treat it like I treat my clothes shopping, where I'm like, I need this, and I go in and I surgical strike, get what I need, and run out of there. But that's mostly because I hate clothes shopping. I'm gonna, so this is so dark back here because of the shadow cast by his body. So we want to keep our gold dark as well. Yeah, I never got into quilting because I don't have a sewing machine, though David was talking about getting one for like hemming and stuff. It'd be ironic if I finally learned, after my mother taught sewing project for so many years when I was a kid and I resisted. It would be hard, it'd be funny if I finally broke down and got a sewing machine. Then I'd have to hem my own pants. I wouldn't have an excuse to like say, hey Mom, do you have any time? But yeah, I have some nice yarns. I have some really pretty kind of burgundy and purple that I thought about using to do another cowl. It's more my colors. The teal is nice, but oh, we need to mute this. So we also need to mute this yellow, which as you can see is really bright. So I'm going to pop a little bit of my purple into here. And I'm going to pop a little bit more. I just want to take it down just a little bit. There we go. And maybe throw a little bit of white in it. Still pretty vibrant though. Pop a little bit of that rich leather in there, mixture. Luckily it's going over a darker color, so it's probably going to be okay. It's not going to come up to its full vibrancy. It'll be more telling when we put the highlights on, because it'll be just tiny little highlights on that. I kind of assume that Kuroniko goes into a yarn store with the same plan that she uses when she goes to an animal shelter, which is, they must all be mine. Must catch them all. Very accurate. I figured I'd know you well enough now. Pretty evident. That was a pretty easy call, though, considering, you know, the two things that you adore that I hear about regularly, other than your roommate's curry, are or housemate's curry, are kittens and yarn. So, pretty easy call there. Too tempting otherwise, yeah. I know, you'd have all the kittens. Need a little less paint on my brush. Whenever you approach the model and you look at your brush and you're like, wow, that's a big glob of paint on my brush, listen to that inner voice. Take a little bit more paint off of your brush. Because if you've got so much paint on your brush that the tip looks too big to actually paint the thing that you're headed for, your gut is probably right on that. I started reading Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive again last night because I had got the miniatures and I wanted to get in the mood to paint them. Ah, yeah. I also need to do the rivets on the back of this, the bandolier here. So I finished book 2, which I think is Words of Radiance. And now I'm headed for book 3, Oathbreaker. Which features the return of one of my favorite characters, so that makes me happy. I want to put a little bit of if I can get a line between the brown and the blue here, I want to. The brown is dark enough that it's mostly serving the purpose, but the blue got a little messy. May I pick the first one? Well, it's like the length of 3 books, so it'll last you for a while. The most annoying thing about Brandon is, for me, is like the stuff that actually his real fan base just gobbles up, which is the interludes with the random characters that, you know, have an impact on like his greater universes and stuff like that. Although some of those, now the interludes in Words of Radiance were actually like made sense to me. Those were necessary interludes. I'm sure they all are eventually. I just have little patience with stuff that pulls me way outside of the characters that I've really grown to like. I read them anyway, but I'm like, come on, get me back to like Kaladin, get me back to like Jasna and Shallan, then I'm happy. It's why epic fantasy, much as I love the genre conventions and much as what I write tends to be rather epic in ways that define the genre, in some ways it's not, because I like to keep my cast of characters a little bit smaller and I don't like to bounce all over the place. At least my main characters. Because I really am looking for main characters that I love to root for. Yeah, actually, $9.99 is a good cost for it. I just picked up Oathbreaker, and it was also $9.99, which was a pleasant surprise, Kuro, because these days, if it's a new ebook, it's like $14.99, and I was ready for that, and I was ready to pay it because I know the book is 450,000 words long. But yeah, it's like 3 novels, and he's going to write 10 of these. So, like, it's going to be 30 books long by the end of the story. At least that's what he's projecting. Which is the most ambitious epic fantasy ever written, as far as I can tell. So it's a good thing I like the characters. Yeah, it's serious. Each book is like 3 books in length. And there are supposed to be 10 of them. Per his outline, apparently. And he's chugging right along. I think we're about to get... He did a novella, too. Edgebinder, I think. That he needed to do. Let me see. I think he's on book 5. He plans, like, a whole year to write one of them. And he's a fast writer. Oh, actually, he's on... Oh, okay, there's a couple of novellas to fill in the bits. So I probably need to actually download Edge Dancer. So, like, right now we're on Rhythm of War. But I thought he had book 5 out. Maybe book 5 is just coming out later this year. I'll have to look. Oh, okay. Wind and Truth is out in this coming year, yeah. So I thought he finished writing it. It just hasn't been released. So yeah, it's a very, very, very long story. He's really good at reveals, though. He's really good at surprising reveals, Brandon Sanderson. It's a very, very big world. I think one of the problems I'm having with it a little bit is just that the world is so very big. Richard, there are enough minor characters that are nonetheless, like, going to be important to the story later. And that's where those interludes I was talking about come in. Like, there is one of his interludes in the first book, and I think earlier in the second book, with a young girl who also has been empowered per the Knights Radiant, and she's like a thief, and she's really cool, but she's like stuck like way across the world from where everything else is happening, right? But apparently her story is important enough that to the later arc that Brandon Sanderson felt like he really needed to fill in that, and apparently that happened twice because there was another novella I saw. His world is big. His world really feels like our world. Like, you know, like often in fantasy sagas, the one thing that happens is that you get a sense that the world is a little bit smaller, at least the known world, because like news travels relatively fast, yada, yada, yada. But in this world, there's enough different cultures that you're just like, you can tell, like, if you're in Europe or an equivalent where there's, you know, various city-states all vying for power, but then there are places that are even more distant that are still touched on, but you they're like, it's like you have, like, there's so much, it feels like the world is huge. He successfully writes a book where it feels like the world is as big as our world, where, like, okay, maybe we're in Europe, but there's still Africa and things are happening there, and there's still Asia and things are happening there, you know, and it feels that way. Like, I don't know that there's another book that ever felt this big to me. Another world, another fantasy epic world that felt this large. Because it's hard to write, right? And you risk, like, you need to keep your readers engaged. So you can't spend too much time at the other reaches or on the other reaches of the world. Hello, Turn. We were just talking about Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive books. I just finished reading the second one last night. I pledged to his miniatures Kickstarter. So I went back to the books after I'd taken a break from them, because I can only read so much epic fantasy before my eyes bleed. But I wanted to get back into them so that I would feel excited to paint the miniatures, because I'm going to do repaints on them, because I got the bigger ones. So I'm excited. I still think the paint jobs I do on them are going to be more like Anubis's paint job, pretty fast. But I should be able to make them look much better than the pre-paints, so even using speed techniques. He's trying. I think he's trying to make the main books follow his main characters, Richard, so that people can stay invested. But this particular interlude character was still obviously a very strong and likable character that had a defined story that's going to influence things down the road. Like, eventually, I'm sure she'll get into the main arc. But he felt like, and he said also, what I read yesterday, is it had been so long between books 2 and 3 that he felt like this was a good place to do a novella, to give his readers something to kind of carry them from book 2 to book 3. Which makes sense, right? That's kind of what I'm doing here with writing Rite of Winter before I finish North of the Wind. Because I'm like, North of the Wind might take a while, and I feel like I need to write this book to... I feel like I am a linear writer. I don't know if Sanderson is. Because sometimes, when you're a writer, speaking just from my perspective, you are, I am a linear writer. I'm coming to terms with that. I have problems writing the next book in a series if I skip a part. If I write a prequel for something, I've probably already written it, and you just don't know about it. Because I discover so many, new things when I'm writing a book. And it'd be really hard for me to write a book. I couldn't write a book between, book 3 and 4 after I'd written book 4. Because there would be stuff. There would have to be reveals and things discovered in that interlude book. And I would have to make sure that those were in book 4, but it's already written, so I can't. So yeah, I feel like... I don't know if Brandon Sanderson is a linear writer, but I'm definitely a linear writer. I think that writers... Maybe he's not, and maybe he is. Because I think that a writer who outlines a lot and sticks to their outlines a lot could probably manage to do prequels. After they'd written the other books, but... Because they've got all their reveals, they've got all their things that are going to be important, so they can figure out what they can say and what they can't say and not accidentally spoiler something in their prelude book. I mean, he may be showboaty, too. He does seem to have that aspect to his personality. I mean, based on his reveal that he had written 4 extra books during the pandemic, the way he revealed it. I mean, that's why that Kickstarter went to what, 26 million? 13 million? It went insanely large. All right. But yeah, I guess my point here is that sometimes you aren't trying to write the books in chronological order, you just have to do that, because that's the way you write. That's the way your brain works. I think the only exception is if your prequel is enough, far enough behind and far enough divorced from other storylines that you can write it without fear of spoiling, because the characters are just in a different era or a different time period, and they won't actually have any contact with your main story's characters until later in the main series. But I don't know. Every writer's different, though. Who knows? I don't know if he's ever spoken about this. I mean, he has an entire free series on writing on YouTube. Lectures that he gave. at a college that he actually had recorded and has put up for free on YouTube. So if I watch those, I've watched one or two of them, but if I watch more of those, I might get a sense for how he thinks about things like that, about structure and story and writing long stories. But yeah, challenging for sure. Challenging for sure. I'm not in a hurry to read my way through the series because I know he's still writing books, but epic fantasy tends to be the kind of thing where I'm not like itching to get to the next book because they are so long. I'm kind of happy to put the story down for a while and read other things. But I know I'm not. I know that I'm weird. I may be weird in that. I know a lot of his fans are just like, wish that all the books would come out now. But yeah, it's interesting. So I'm not going to go up to my full highlight. I'm just going to use the light yellow to pick up some highlights here. If I did do a brighter highlight on stuff in shadow, it would need to be reflected light. And I would need to kind of define what kind of light that was and apply it coming from the bottom. So probably with this, if I was doing that bounce light, the highlight on the bottom of these little medallions would actually be stronger than the one on the top, because this is definitely in a shadow area. You can see it. So I'm going to dull that down a little bit, in fact. But yeah, I guess I'll have to pick up his novella, because I like Lift. I like that character. And I wanted to see what happened to her. Alrighty, so there, putting the highlight a little bit stronger on the bottom than on the top. It's going to give the impression that there's light bouncing up at that surface instead of directly shining down on it, which is more accurate. So we want to strengthen this in that case. Starting to look a little tighter back here, bringing in all the details, tightening it up. Need to do the fur still, the highlights on the fur. And up here, we're still a little bit in the light. We can see the light, so we can put dots of highlight on the top of these little rivets. But yeah, I think I might start on one of those repaints. Maybe I'll prime it tonight. Although they did the eyes on the bigger pieces with stamps, and I kind of like how they've been done, so I think I'm going to actually mask off the faces on these guys and paint them without priming over. I'll paint over the base paint job. I should show you guys. Their basic like action figure paint jobs are actually very much block painted here. Let me show you. Instead of just kind of describing it, let me show you one. 1 second. So this is one of the pre-painted Stormlight Archive figures. And they did put out regular 30mm sized ones or 28s, but this is Jasna. So what they've done is they've cast the model in this purple plastic, almost entirely from what I can tell. and then they've painted over the areas that need to be painted over. But the way that they've done the eyes is actually they've stamped them, so the eyes are actually quite good. So they're using really tiny stamps. Yeah, no, they're decent pre-paints. Maybe Sir Gambit, maybe. But so essentially what I would do is I'd probably mask off the face, and I will repaint the skin tones in the mouth, but I may use a lot of the existing eyes. Like the eyebrows are perfect too, so that's good to paint over. But you can see the sword is just as basic. They didn't do washes or anything. When Reaper started doing its pre-paints, we got them to actually do washes. But that's not standard on most standard, like, just pre-painted stuff. Yeah, this is a 75, I think. Actually, now that I've got her here, I'll actually apply the millimeter ruler. Foot. Yeah, she's about 70 millimeters, and they do vary depending on who the character is. But there are some cool, it's got a lot of nice room for me to do texture on it, as you can see. Texture, even a little bit of freehand. She actually does have... Hold on. They did not stick to the art. So that is directly based on the cover of Oathbreaker, and they got Michael Whalen to do these covers, and he's, of course, a genius. They didn't make the sword all Ripley like it was coming into effect. But, so that's Jasna, and she's got different hair in this one. But Brandon approved all these. They did stick mostly to the colors, but there are several, like some of the books, and this is the color I'm going to use for Shalyn. This is like one of the other characters I really like. Oh, but they had Michael Whalen do a separate art with her. But he's just Michael Whalen's been one of my favorite fantasy artists for eternity. But yeah, on some of his artwork, he is doing more elaborate, like, patterns on the edges of dresses and stuff, so I feel like I could do that here. Yeah, the eyes are good. And so essentially that's why I'm thinking I'll mask this, I'll prime everything else. Because since this is bare plastic, once I realized it wasn't actually painted, but it was bare plastic for some of this purple color, and I could tell that because when I went to remove mold lines, I could see the purple plastic underneath. So yeah, so that's something where I wouldn't paint right onto the plastic, much as it does seem to have like a little bit of a finish. It's not super shiny, but I wouldn't know about the paint really adhering. I will probably wash it, mask it, prime it, and then repaint it. I think it'll repaint really well. I'll take pictures before I do so that I can like have it, but I'm more likely to base it on the concept art. Yeah, the UK covers, yeah. Michael Whalen is just a boss. He's just got it's such a good cover. The whole cover itself. There. Like, the whole cover is this. There we go. Although I trimmed it off, but there's a giant, like, nasty evil monster in the background, and she's essentially using her powers to, like, reshape a broken wall. But it's cool, it's cool. But yeah, he's just such a good artist. So good. He was when I was, like, a teenager, like, I would look at his book covers, and Michael Whalen was, like, hands down my favorite. He's just so good. He also did those Dragon Riders of Pern covers, you may remember, a long time ago. If you're a McCaffrey fan, which I know many of you are, I've got one of his art books here. But he's a great one to study, too. He just is an interesting artist. He uses contrast really well, uses color really well. Yeah, there's a lot of famous book covers he's done. A lot of famous book covers. Sanderson has said that Michael Whalen was the person he always had wanted for these books, and so Tor, knowing that Sanderson was a big enough name to sell the books, actually did get Michael Whalen for the covers, at least for the U.S. covers. So. But yeah, so I'm actually kind of psyched about painting these. Once I prime it too, I'll be able to see the mold lines better. But oh yeah, and here on the cloud, you can see where I scraped away some of the mold line, and there's the purple plastic. So that lets me know what I'm dealing with. I think I need to use my my electric mold line remover on these clouds. I think that's going to let me round the shapes a little bit, even if it leaves a little texture. Yeah, I mean, Pern was my first love affair with science fiction fantasy, pretty much. And McCaffrey's one of the earliest I read the Harper Hall series before the Dragon Riders series, but I would like continually take the Pern books out from the library and just reread them and reread them. Alright, did I get all the gold here? No, I've got buckles there. Buckles. Little bits of white. Scale and scales, yes. Hey, I think one of my characters would protest there. She's more of a dog person. Depends on how you write your dragons. Alright, got that all blocked in. Although technically her mentor is far more of a cat-like entity. So perhaps. Alrighty, and of course we've still got to do the steel enema as well. We're gonna block in, gonna use my purple red to get the bottom of this wrap. Get my fire red out in a bit, but I'll base it with this. And this is just a mix of the orchid and the Styx purple. It's a very pretty mulberry color. If you want a really pretty mulberry color, do these two. So that's orchid purple, which is a newer, which everybody should own because, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. And then mixed 50-50 more or less with Styx purple. That gives you that beautiful mulberry color. Which is a great shader for reds. What? Richard, you never read The Dragon Riders of Pern? Well, if you're into vintage sci-fi or sci-fantasy, some people have called her sci-fantasy, but it really is written to be science fiction. Pick them up. Worth it. Worth reading. Still worth reading. Pick up Dragon Dawn or no, not Dragon Dawn, the first one, Dragonflight. Yeah, Dragonflight, Dragon Quest, and the White Dragon. That's true. That's true, Korniko. Cats don't like other cats. That would explain it, wouldn't it? That would explain it. I'm not going to spoil her anything. I'm being very, very sensitive to like Slayer and other people who have not finished my books ever since I slipped up the other week. Gotta be very oblique about my commentary. Yeah, Crystal Singer. Yep. Not super impressed with Pern, huh? I loved them. But you know what, Crowley? I loved them as a teenage girl. And that could be part of it right there. Moreover, I read them as a teenage girl who was somewhat of an outcast at school, and the idea of having my own dragon who loved me unquestionably was totally I was into that idea. But this is just a great example, though, of no matter how good the book, no matter how iconic the book, it's not going to be for everybody. And you never, as a writer, you never take that personally, if you're smart. Because it's just the way it is. Sometimes it's just not going to resonate. Because you can't resonate with everyone. Yeah, it is okay. Exactly. I'm going to put a little bit of a liner around the gold up here because this big plate needs something to set it off from the leather. Then we'll get to highlighting it. Right, they weren't bad. No, it's not poor writing for sure, but it wasn't your cup of tea. Fair. There are people who love Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn saga more than life itself, and I just couldn't even make it halfway through the first book. So it wasn't bad writing. I like a lot of Sanderson's other stuff, but just that particular story just didn't appeal to me. The characters didn't catch me. Oh, Earthsea 100%. But even then, like, it was the first two Earthsea books. The thing about Le Guin, though, is that you can go back and reread Ursula, and you are not disappointed. I went back and reread A Wizard of Earthsea several years ago, and I was like, okay, this is an even better book now. I was like in my late 40s, I was like, okay, this is an even better book than it was when I read it as a teenager. Oh, I read Hobbit. By the time what grade was it? I think 8th grade. By the time my 8th grade class read The Hobbit officially for school, I had read that book 25 times, and I was on my 26th reread. And I told my teacher that, and she's just like, well, you should ace the test. And I aced the entire test plus the extra credits. And I didn't even have to finish the 26th read to do it. Oh, Hitchhiker's Guide. That would be a good one to reread. So we'll do light from above, light from below, and then we'll do our pure white spot highlight. This is very flat, not rounded, so that's why I'm highlighting it like this. This particular gold piece. Oh, Valdemar TV. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked at... I don't remember what Mercedes said about the whole thing on Quora. I'm sure that somebody will ask her inevitably there whether... how she feels about it. As a writer, I think they are doing Vaniel though, Vaniel's story, so hopefully. Hitchhiker's Guide at its core is very simple. And I feel like that's why you'd be less impressed as you read it again. And you already know all the twists and turns and the fun things. Yeah, so, well, they should hopefully do it justice. They chose Vaniel, which is a heavy one, instead of Talia, so... I was so into Mercedes Lackey for a while as a teenager that my writing started to feel like her. Same with C.J. Cherry, which Trojan knows is one of my all-time favorite authors. Like, for a while there, when I was younger, I was reading so much. I was so into C.J. Cherry books that I actually started to write like her. And I feel like a lot of my style still does owe a lot to her. And there's probably, like, undercurrents of Lackey in my style as well that I just don't... If I reread some of Mercedes' stuff, earlier stuff, I bet I would find it. I would see where her writing influenced me. So bring up that white. That's a little bit long. Yeah. Yeah, it did get one... Toward the end, it did get really dark. Cornico, you're right. And that is partially why that last book of that trilogy is the one I don't reread. I'm not... See, I didn't like Kurtz's writing style. I felt it was heavier. It was a more epic fantasy, which was kind of like what she did. But I didn't enjoy her writing style. I think because it was maybe... I don't know. I'd have to analyze why I liked... Cherry better. I think I just liked her characters better. I had a hard time sympathizing with some of Kurtz's characters. Characters really make or break it for me. Like, it's just the way my brain is organized. And it's why some good books don't appeal to me at all if the characters aren't likable or aren't like don't have enough for me to latch on to. But this is, again, it's a thing where, everybody's different. And not everybody likes every good book. There we go. I feel like I need a little bit more light slanting across the face at the top. Yeah, her world was well drawn. I only read a few. When I was much younger, like 12, 13, I read a lot of Marion Zimmer Bradley. There we go. So that's a nice muted gold. It's still different from the leather, and we can see that it's different, but it's not totally it's not very yellow, right? It's not like just springing out and smacking you in the face with yellowness like some gold does. I was thinking the other day, I'm wondering if I would ever actually write my epic fantasy. If I do write it, it's going to end up being a very different book than it was when I first started it. I started it back in my 20s. 1993, to be exact. The winter of 1993. I think I still have those old chapters, but I think I would rewrite everything. So much better writer now. Bye, Crowley. Have a good one. Avoid any adaptation of anything you're remotely attached to. I do that until I hear reviews, Richard. And then sometimes I'll get to take a look at it. Like, I still haven't taken a look at the Sandman TV series, the Neil Gaiman one. But I loved Sandman. Like, Sandman got me through parts of college, my college experience. So I was very invested in that. And even though it's gotten pretty high acclaim, I haven't gone to watch it. Eventually, maybe I will, because, enough people have said that it's really good and really faithful to the comic book that I would probably be okay. But yeah, it's risky, right? Yeah. Neil loves it. Well, if Neil loves it, then it's probably good. Yeah, and he is. He's one of those hands-on people. Whenever anybody takes one of his IPs, he wants to be in it. He wants to be there, like, with his hands in it. And I respect that, because that's a lot of work. Okay, well, maybe I'll ask David if we can watch it. Yeah, Sandman was another big... Gaiman in general was a big influencer of my writing, I think. Just the way... Just because he and Robin McKinley wrote stories that I would have written, right? Drawn heavily on myth and folklore, but spinning something completely new about it, around it. And that was, like, those books were the books that, like, made my young writer brain understand that I could do that, right? That's what I wanted to do as a writer. There, get those little buckles. You seem to be the only one who ducked it. At least here on stream. Oh. Well, yeah. I could see why they would gender swap Constantine, though. I mean, much as I love the original Constantine, he was very much the hard-boiled, he was that archetype, right? And it's kind of more fun. I could see how it would be more fun to do a female version of him. In fact, that almost makes me want to watch it more. Because I also was a Constantine fan. Oh, they changed Death? Now that's a little bit... Yeah, that's a little bit more dicey for me, because I'm a huge Death fan. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch the first episode and see if I want to continue. It's so hard for me to sit down, make time to sit down and watch visual media. That's why I'm cautious of what I even spend the time on. What is it on, guys? Where can I watch it? Is it Netflix at this point? Ah, not doing anything about it. I see. Well, Death always was one of his best characters. That's why she had her own spin-off series. That's true, he's not. That's true, he's not. Although one would assume that wasn't, like, Neil's, like, call necessarily. You know, there are other people. There are all other creative entities involved in that writing. But that's fair, Richard. I respect you for that. Like, for me, I'm not as invested in Constantine. So, for me, I would be like, yeah, sure, I can see that. But I am invested in Death, and if they change Death, then I'm going to be like, I don't know. Netflix? Okay. Alright. Constantine show is also good, but it ends weirdly. Yeah, that cancellation thing. Stupid cancellation. Thanks, John. Thanks for the... I'm sure, It really couldn't do the Constantine show either, huh? Oh, interesting. I'll have to see where I fall on that continuum then. Alright, so we're just putting a little bit of highlight here. We're coming on where we gotta close this one down. You loved yeah, I loved Comic Death too. TV one was cool? Alright, maybe I'll give it a chance. Right now, David and I have enough to watch at night, but maybe I'll ask him if he wants to watch it with me. We tried to watch Witcher together, but he was not all into that one. Possibly because I could not stop, like, expressing my belief that Henry Cavill is the sexiest man alive when he's playing that character. I may have screwed that one up myself. Just putting a little bit. A lot of these are big flat plates, so edge highlight is more than adequate. But yeah, we'll close it down a little bit. That's pretty awesome, Graniko. Maybe there was a con that you didn't know about. But especially because most of these plates are sunk down behind the axe, we really want to pick up those edge highlights on the top, and that's really all we need. I am going to put a little bit of a shadow, though, because wherever the plates change direction, I tend to put my shadows there. Because we still do need our shadows. Right, Papa? Oh, hi, Papa! I just had somebody put her big head under my brush hand. Does that mean it's time for you to come up and greet the stream? And tell them how much you would like me to take you for a walk? Hold on. Let me rinse out my brush. All right, Bubba. Hop up. Bubba. Hop up. There we go. There's my bubs. I gotcha, bubs. I gotcha. The stream needs its kiki thing. Needs its kiki dose. Hi there. Yeah, are there squirrels out there? Are there? Maybe? My own personal dragon who loves me unconditionally, yes. You are pretty draconic, Keeks. If you had scales, I would be sad because they wouldn't be soft. Yes, you're very soft. But you'd be a dragon. I could see her personality being very draconic. Yes. The cutest, buffest nerd around. It's true, it is a little too Final Destination, isn't it? Dragons can be furry too. Are you a dragon, Kiki? I always thought you were a Cerberus. But maybe you're a dragon. Oh, she's like, I don't know. Maybe that's why I always put my ears back. I'm looking for back-swept horns. Yes. Draconic dog. You could totally sketch Kiki as a dragon. You could just add the horns. Yeah, add some bigger claws. Make the furry tail a little longer. Yeah, you could be a dragon, Papa. You could be a dragon. You're a good girl. Alright. Excellent. Well, we didn't get through everything. We've got gold still to do through here, and I still need to get that red on there. And we need to do the axe NMM as well, and the fur. But we are actually getting there, guys. Now look at all the freaking gray is covered up except for the base. Yay! Yay! Hey, he looks more together, doesn't he? He looks more together. Where is the dog? Sorry, toddler. Sorry. Sorry, tiny marble. Mini marble. Alrighty, guys. We're going to call that. And then tomorrow I will be on stressing about the parental visit. And we're going to be finishing out... I think we... Oh, I need to do the gold up here. That's right. I better think about what we're going to do on the base then, because I'll probably chop together a base and do some sculpting after we finish out the gold on the head and the gold on that side plate. Because it's really only the little things, maybe the strings on the side here or the bow. Those are the little things that we want to do. So yeah, then we have to figure out how we're going to base her. Thanks very much, folks. Oh, it's almost the weekend again. Yay, weekend. Even if it's a parental weekend for me. Yeah, getting close to done on both of these, actually. We just need to base. This guy, I mean, he's got a dungeony kind of big flagstone base, which I like. We'll probably just extend that, put him on a base and extend it. It's tomorrow, European holiday market. Oh, nice! Sweet, Turgeon. Sweet. Have fun. Have fun. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow for Friday. Have a good day, John. Thanks for corralling the stream, and Kerniko as also for your mod presence. Everybody have a good one. I'll see you tomorrow.